Hello, it's me again. As I mentioned before, my name is Billy Harrell. I was born and raised here in Tyler, Texas, over on the north side. Graduated from high school back in, let's see, when was that? So long ago. 1968. Go Bulldogs! That was my high school mascot, the Bulldogs. Well, I have been, well, music has been a part of my life pretty much all of my life. I can't remember a time since the time I was a child that I didn't sing or beat on something, anything that was musical. As a matter of fact, I was raised in a house that my mother was a gospel singer, and in my home, gospel music played pretty much from sunup to sundown. And of course, I listened to it. I used to go to the choir rehearsals with my mother, and she was had a beautiful soprano voice. And I used to just be amazed when I would go to these choir rehearsals in this little church and just watch them execute their gifts. And I didn't know it at the time, but I had that gift as well because I never stopped singing. Even to today, I have melodies. I was speaking to a young man backstage earlier that I had to get in contact with my daughter here recently because I thought I was losing my mind because melodies are always firing in my head. There's always some kind of music going around in my head. So music has always been a part of my life. I used to live in North Tyler on North Tyler Street. And right across the street from where I lived, there was this little cafe, Miss Wilson's Cafe. Miss Wilson had a jukebox in there. And because of my love for music, I would go over to the cafe and I would sweep the floors for her or clean up around there, and she'd let me play free music on the jukebox. I stayed in there all day long, sweeping and cleaning and playing my music and just having a really good time. By the time I got to junior high school, I decided to put together my own singing group, and I had a group of buddies that we ran together, my little clique back in school. And since this was in the 60s, we named our group the Psychedelic Five. You get me? Five of us, and just so happens I'm the only one that could actually sing. The rest were just my buddies. We do these talent shows and stuff, and the girls would scream, and I said, this is going to be my life. This is going to be my life. And incidentally, it turned out to be that way. And later on, when I got to high school, there was a local group there in Tyler called the Mellow Five. You see, this stuff is all dated, goes way back. They were called the Mellow Five. They were a doo-wop group. And one of the guys, members of the group, used to hear me singing just around, just different places. And he came to me one day, and these were older guys, I think 5, 6, 7 years older than I was, and asked me would I come to a rehearsal with him. Now, of course, I knew who his group was, the Mellow Five, because they were oh so popular, and the girls loved them. So I said, well, I'm headed in the right direction. So I go to the rehearsal with him. And once I get there, the other members of the group, and they had been together for quite some time, they didn't want this youngster in the group. Well, why not? Well, we already have a group, we're established, and how do we know if he can sing? Okay, well, I'll tell you what, youngster, that's what they call me. We're going to start singing something a cappella, and that's the way they sang. They were a doo-wop group, they sang a cappella. We're going to start singing, and we want you to just add a harmony part to what we're doing. So they started singing some old Temptation song, and obviously me having this brilliant ear that I have, that I was born with, I just joined in and started singing the harmony part. Okay, so they go to another song. I do it again. So I'm in the group now. I'm a part of the Mellow Five, so it's now the Mellow Six. And so after, I guess about a year of, and we would rehearse day in and day out. We weren't working. We'd be at rehearsal and could be 5, 6 hours a day. So one day we decided to get up and go make our mark in the world, and we would go to Memphis, Tennessee. There was a record label there called Stax Records, and they had great artists like Rufus Thomas, Isaac Hayes, and the great Otis Redding sitting on the dock of the bay. And so we go to Memphis, Tennessee, and when we get there, at the time, you couldn't just walk up to a record company studio and walk in. You couldn't do that. You had to have an appointment. So we pulled our old van up there and got out, tried to get past the guard gate. No, buddy, you can't come in. Wouldn't let us in. So we stood back off to the side, and as we noticed the cars going in, we saw a Rolls Royce pull in. That's got to be somebody. So as the car pulled in, we ran in behind it, and we just surrounded the car and started singing. Boy, we started singing. And the guy got out of the car and actually looked at us like, are you guys crazy? And we kept singing. He said, I'll tell you what, come on inside. So they take us inside, listen to us sing, and say, you know what, you guys got something. So I think we're going to sign you. But first, we need to find you a manager. So they called a guy that was a friend of theirs, someone that we didn't know from Memphis. And we ended up singing, recording rather, maybe 4 or 5 songs, original material, our material. And so after this happened, they sent us back to Tyler, Texas, gave us a couple of $100. Go back to Tyler and wait in a few months. You're going to hear from us, and it's all going to be good. Well, we never heard from them again. No surprise there. And so we kept on trotting, and we kept singing, kept rehearsing. And one day at a rehearsal, we decided, well, why not let's try Los Angeles? Let's try that. So we didn't have 2 nickels to rub between us. And so I went to my dad. My dad owned a garage, and he sold used cars. He would buy cars, fix them up, and sell them. He had a Volkswagen van out there. And I went and asked him, I said, Dad, we're going to California so we can make it in show business. And we'd like to buy that van. And we didn't have any money, right? No, we didn't. He said, you can have it. Go ahead. So we get the van, and we had to find us a manager. So we found this guy named Bubba, and we made him our road manager because he was a Volkswagen mechanic. And guess what? It certainly broke down before we got to L.A. It broke down a couple of times. I remember one day it broke down in the desert, and before the sun went down, he was scrambling up under there, and he took the motor out, and he did whatever he does, and got it back in there, and before it got completely dark, it was running again. And we actually made it into California. We got in just right into California to Salton Sea, where it broke down again for good. And we left it there on the road. Yes, we did. And so when I get to LA, shortly after we got there, we ended up in some situations where eventually I ended up quitting that group and started my own group, which became a very, very popular group for years, and recording artists called A New Experience. And that was a great experience for me. And so after some years of struggling in the music business, because it's a tough business, I ended up coming back home with some disappointments, great experiences in between. And so I had to be like everyone else. I had to get a job here in Tyler, Texas. So I started working at Goodwill South out here in Tyler. And because of the music that has always been in me day and night all of my life, I would walk around all day long, working and singing, singing and working, working and singing. And I did this all throughout the day. And it got to the point where customers would come in and they would know me just for the guy that sings all the time. That's who they would ask for when they came in. And it became a big thing. Sometimes I would even get on the mic at the store and start singing, you know. And they really loved it. And I loved it as well because I love people. One day, a lady walked up to me, a customer. And she walked up and she said, Billy, God told me to tell you something. Okay, what did he say? She said, you're going to be the one that sings at my father's memorial service. He just passed recently. And I'm like, are you kidding me? She said, no, seriously. God said it's going to be you. I didn't know her. I just knew her as a customer coming in the store. And so I said, well, when is it? She said, well, the service is going to be this coming Saturday. I said, no, I can't do it. I absolutely can't do it because one of my dear friends passed away, and his service is Saturday, and I'm going to be there for it. And she said, well, I'm doing what God told me to do. And I said, well, I appreciate it, but I'm sorry, I can't do it. She reached into her pocketbook, pulled out a wad of money, grabbed me by my hand, and pressed the money into my hand and said, please, take this. This is whether you make it or not. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't take that. I'm not going to be able to do it. She said, well, keep it. Whether you make it or not, it's yours. And she left. So Saturday rolls around. I go to my friend's service. And at the end of the service, I go to the home where the family gathers, and we're just having a time there, celebrating his homecoming. Then all of a sudden, my spirit is pricked. My spirit is really pricked. I'm thinking about, wow, I should have gone to the memorial service. And so I jumped in my car, and I drove to Lake Palestine to the service. So when I pulled up, I noticed outside, I saw rebel flags everywhere. I saw Harleys and bikes everywhere. There's nothing against Harley owners or rebel flags if you have one. And I'm looking around, I'm saying, oh God, what have I gotten myself into? You know what I'm saying? And so I didn't get out of the car. I sat in the car and I called her. And I said, are you here yet? She said, no, I'm running a little late. But just get out, go introduce yourself. Get out and go introduce myself. You got to be kidding me, you know. And so I sat there for a few minutes and then I said to myself, well, God, she told you that I was going to do this. Well, I'm going to trust you that you're going to walk me through this process right now, okay? So I got out of my car, and the way the building was set up, there was a ramp, an incline that led up into the auditorium or the room where the service was going to be held. And all along the railing there, these guys were standing there leaning up against the wall like this. And I walked up and I walked up with my bright and wonderful self. Hey, how's everybody doing? And everybody spoke to me. They were very kind and were really sweet people, right? And this kind of throws me, you know? So I walk inside. I find myself a seat, and I'm sitting there for a while, and then the lady's husband comes out from the back, and he introduces himself to me. He said, Billy, and he went to tell me about what the program was going to be, and okay, so I'm sitting there, and people start coming in. And so when it was my time to get up and sing, I got up to sing my song. I sang the song, and at the end of the song, I just began to speak. And I really began to speak out of my heart, out of my spirit. And the next thing I know, tears began to flow, and people were crying. And it was a very powerful moment. And not so much just for the song, but whatever it was that God spoke into my spirit to speak to those that were there attending the service, it was something that touched their hearts, and mine as well. So I go and sit down, and I'm getting ready to prepare myself to leave, and the wife comes over, and she said, Billy, would you mind singing a couple more songs? And at this point, I'm just saying, well, you know, I'm no rush to get back now. So I got up, and I sang 2 more songs. At the end, I got up to leave, and her husband walked up to me, and he handed me an envelope. And in it was several $100s. Now, little did they know that at the time, I was having car troubles, and I had to buy a part for my car, and I didn't have the money for it at the time. And the money that they had given me covered everything that I needed to get my car fixed. And I'm looking at this now, and I'm just saying, well, now, God, this is how you're going to get my car fixed? I have to do this. Okay, well, I'm beginning to understanding something about you. And it led me to understand that sometimes things come up in your life that are not orchestrated by your natural walk, but are orchestrated by the hands of God, and you may never even know it until it's there right in front of you. And I learned a lesson from that. And after this happened to me, I get a call a couple of weeks later from another lady that I did not even know, asked me to sing at her mother's funeral, who was dying of cancer. And I'm like, wow. A few weeks later, I get another call from someone to sing at a funeral. And so at this point, I'm like, God, you really must be trying to tell me something here. And all around me, I began to see people who were at the end of their lives. And I was being called upon, not just to sing, but I was being called upon to spend time with them. I had two friends that right during that period were dying of cancer. And I spent all of their last days with them. And very powerful things began to happen in my life just from this alone. And so in that whole year, I ended up doing 6 or 7 funerals. And 4 or 5 people that I knew that were passing away, I ended up spending their last days with them, sitting with them, talking to them, singing to them, whatever the moment called for. And again, I asked God, what is it that you're trying to show me? Is something going to happen in my life? Is it my time? I never got an answer for that. But one thing I did learn from it is that I pray that the way God has used me at this stage of my life, and I'm 71, I pray that when my time comes, that somebody, somewhere, God is going to speak to them and say, you're going to be the one who's going to spend some time with Billy before the day I call him home. And that's my story. And thank you for listening. Thank you.